Hello and welcome to Zerocarbonista Series 6, The Cow in the Room. I'm Ian Collins, and this is your number one go-to environment-based podcast. If it's green, it is in. Dale, has the last couple of weeks, 2025, have been like pandemonium for you? I'm thinking you're not getting enough hammock time. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, it has been busy. It's been quiet. The last week I had an op on my ankle on Friday, and I've been incapacitated since then. I can't drive. I'm hobbling around now, okay, so that helps.
Wow.
So it's been a relatively quiet week, just in my inbox, and you know, but I'm not complaining.
No, you see, the word incapacitated in this capacity has taken me by surprise because you're not usually a bloke that stops doing stuff, but those football injuries take their toll,
Mm.
and star strikers have to put up with this once in a while. Though,
Yeah, yeah. I got one last game in on Friday night. Scored a great goal. Then I
did you?
was in surgery at 7 a.m. the next morning.
Wow.
That's like no time to spare.
But maybe that's not a bad thing because it has given you a lot of time to digest some really crazy old shit going on in the world,
Oh yeah.
like Donald Trump's energy secretary. I mean, I think we should really start with this character, Chris Wright, who might be wrong.
Yeah, he's got a great name, isn't he? You got Donald Trump, farts every time he opens his mouth, and Mr. Wright is clearly not, right, about net zero. I think
Yeah,
he's
well, he
banging on
claims
about
that
net
it's a
zero, right?
sinister tool to
Yeah,
shrink human freedom.
amazing, amazing set of words, really. But you know, the whole Trump universe is just completely counterfactual, isn't it? I mean, the last couple of days, I don't know if you've seen, you probably have been banging on about Ukraine, how they started the war, and they could have had peace any time in the last 4 years if they'd simply sat down with the Russians and so on and so on, and how he's I think he called him today a dictator. He said
I
Zelensky's a
did.
dictator. The people don't like him. He wants his $500 million back, and all kinds of other
I mean,
Trumpisms.
it was kind of interesting. I interviewed a couple of Republicans, proper stalwart Trump-like Republicans, who said that Trump was talking shite on this. They couldn't work out why he would kind of come out with a demonstrable lie that
Mm,
Ukraine started a war.
mm.
I mean, when they
Well,
clearly didn't, and the idea that you can just stop that anytime you like. He then talked about, well, they needed to have a general election. We didn't have any general elections during the Second World War. There was 6 years, I think it was, without general because there was a
mm,
war going on. And I think Ukraine would probably claim a kind of similar point on that.
yeah, Trump is all about alternative facts, and we saw that at his first coronation when he claimed he had enormous crowds, record-breaking crowds, and the pictures showed something really different. And his press spokesperson said, "Well, we have alternative facts." That set the tone for
Yeah,
everything that's happened since.
it's
But this
alternative facts.
this Mr. Righty Wrongy, his energy secretary, right? He's in tune with reform. It's probably the other way around, actually. Farage is probably taking his cues from Trump and Trump's team because they came out today or this week anyway. Uh, they actually declared war on net zero, which is a crazy thing to do. They're going to tax wind and solar farms. They're going to ban battery farms.
Yeah.
They do all kinds of crazy shit, really, because they say net zero is bad for us, which is, just taking a leaf out of Trump's playbook, really.
Well, it's interesting because again, something we debated in the week. So I tell you what we'll do. We'll get some right wing voices on who are going to tell us why what reform have come up with here is amazing, and they're going to have what's it called a, what's that tax called that you have on
A windfall.
a windfall tax? That's it. They're going to have a windfall tax. So let's line up some right wing voices who can tell us why reform are ahead of the game on this and why they're thinking what other people aren't thinking. And we couldn't find a right wing voice because
Wow.
the right wing didn't endorse or think this was a particularly good idea. It was badly thought through. And clearly, I think what they really wanted was to get this windfall tax, almost like, no, 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 talk about taxes on oil. We're going to put it on net zero areas like wind farms and stuff. Um, but it wasn't really universally received by their own audience, if you like, including
Yeah.
Guido Fawkes.
That's right. Coming to him in a second, just to say there already is a windfall tax on wind energy and solar power. That was put in place at the first time during the energy crisis of the general windfall tax on fossil fuels. And actually, the rate at which renewables pays this tax and the size of the exemptions means that renewable energy already pays more through the windfall tax than fossil fuels do. So Farage hasn't even come up with something original here, just a rehashing of something that's already happened in Britain and something that's being said in the United States. And,
Yeah.
they call themselves the party of common sense, but there's no common sense in taxing renewable energy, green energy, which is cheap. We need to get our bills down. Why slap a tax on energy if you
Yeah.
want to get your bills down? These people don't make sense.
A lot of the comments that came through from the voices we spoke to were that, and I was expecting, to have this sort of load of voices. So we had voices that were saying what you're saying, and then I thought we'll get these other voices that will give for the purpose of some kind of balance or whatever, we'll get the other voices on. And what they all said, the sort of right wing economic voice, was that no, no, we don't want to dismantle wind farms. We want battle it out. Whatever works best, whatever's best for the market, whatever is ultimately the most efficient is the one we want. And I thought that was quite revealing. And I heard that played out I saw Richard Tice arguing with a right wing commentator on social media over this. She was saying, no, no, let the markets decide this. This isn't about dismantling wind farms or solar panels. It never should be.
Yeah. And I remember when we first talked about Trump and his plans, I made a similar point. I can't believe that Trump will move against renewable energy because it's in America's interest,
Yeah.
economic interest. And I can't see him slapping taxes on it, particularly since it's Republican states that have benefited the most from what Biden has done with his IRA Act. And here's a funny thought as well. I think Farage in the news this week, he claimed the Conservative Party weren't right wing. There was some argument he's having about right wing opinion. You reminded me of it. You said, right wingers don't agree with Farage. He would say they're not right wing. He's right wing. They're like, I don't know, middle of the road. They're lefties or whatever it is.
Yeah,
He's
well,
kind of,
from that perspective, the Tories are a bunch of socialists.
that's right. That's right. He's carving out this new territory for himself, or he's
Yeah.
trying to. But I think ultimately he'll fail. You can't be the party of common sense and then just completely talk shite all the time, can you? Can you?
Well, he would say he's the voice of the common man.
Yeah,
You
but he's
don't
not, is he?
understand it, Dale Vince.
Yeah, but you look at all of the opinion polls, right? And like vast majority of people in our country care about the climate crisis, want something done about it. We just put a social media post out about this. He's not in tune with the people on this issue.
This is a question from Julie, who says, I gather that research shows that giving people information isn't the best way to change their attitudes and behavior, but it might be a start. So have you thought about putting some bald cow in the room statistics in your billing emails to Ecotricity companies and on your Devil's Kitchen packaging, such as that getting rid of meat and dairy would free up 75% of the land in the UK for rewilding and carbon drawdown? Love the podcast. Keep going. So this is like, do you remember when milk started putting ads on the side of milk bottles a few years ago? And it looked a bit kind of, wow, that's different. I think what's being suggested there from Julie is something similar.
Yeah. So just to wind back to the start of the question, I haven't seen this research. My experience has always been that if you put information in front of people, that's the beginning of how you get them to change how they live by just making facts obvious to them and choices obvious to them. That's what we've done at Forest Green Rovers. That's how we got football fans to go veggie and vegan and all that kind of stuff, and adopt this whole net zero nonsense, as Farage would call it. But we haven't stuck anything in Ecotricity bills yet or on Devil's Kitchen packaging. It's an interesting idea, but what I keep doing is digging out really interesting statistics and facts as we assemble this book, The Cow in the Room. There's two I just want to mention. One is wolves. I just bumped into a story about
I thought you
wolves.
were saying I just bumped into a wolf.
Yeah, that's why I look so kind of, a bit ragged.
Yeah.
Somebody's done a study. Anybody familiar with the rewilding and tree planting will know that deer are the enemy, actually, with an abundance of deer, but because they don't have a natural predator. Somebody done a study and said all we need is 187 wolves in our country to balance out the deer population to the extent that trees can grow naturally again without being eaten while they're little, shrubby things
Yeah, yeah.
by red deer. And then they make a calculation and said that actually that would be worth 5% of all of the carbon that we're hoping to lock up with our tree planting work across the country. And then they put a value on that carbon and said each wolf is worth £150,000. I thought it was an amazing way to express numbers and a wildlife story. 187 wolves are worth 150 grand each, and we can grow trees much more easily if we just bring a natural predator back to our ecosystem. I like that story.
Yeah. And the other good thing about it is that if you let a few wolves out in Richmond Park in southwest London, a lot of those annoying lycra clad joggers might not well be out in the morning. So, it's got a double edged thing going on there, Dale.
Some hidden benefits.
No
And
more people with madly oversized headphones pretending to be fitness fanatics.
well,
Don't want to
I'm
get
just
eaten by the wolf, right?
I don't want to get eaten by that issue. I'm just going to move along now.
Well,
I
should we
want
move to
to.
Jim Ratcliffe, who some
Can
say
I,
is a wolf in the
can,
tax department because he doesn't get football and he's a tax exile, according to a major Labour donor. Who could this be, Dale?
uh, well, I just wanted to talk about shrimps actually. And
Is there a juxtaposition with Jim Ratcliffe?
it's just the second part of the answer to our listener's question about facts.
Yeah, okay, well, let's do
And,
shrimps
and
before we move on to
all right.
lobsters.
I read this incredible story this week about shrimps and something called eye stalk ablation. Right now, just when you think you know all of the cruelty that the factory farming industry has to offer, you know the depths of depravity that it can go to, I learned this week something new. They pull the eye stalks of a shrimp out, cut them with a knife and crush them. I'm not sure which way around they do it because if you cut them before you crush them, you think it has no effect. But crushing the eyes apparently makes the poor little shrimp lay an abundance of eggs. So this is how they fertilize and grow other shrimps. 440 billion shrimps a year on our planet are farmed and have their eyes crushed as part of the fertilization process. Eye stalk ablation. Some of the big supermarkets here said, "Oh, we're going to stop that," or "We are stopping that," or something like that. And I'm like, "Oh my God, guys, how long have you been doing it for?"
Yeah.
And WTF?
So this is, and then they will lay. I guess for the fear of their life, they will do the equivalent of a procreation,
Must be
uh,
that.
which is sort of the natural way evolution tends to work, and
Mm,
that's
mm.
what the suppliers and the farmers of shrimps know.
And
That's
yet,
horrendous.
and yet, scientific studies are saying it doesn't really seem to make a big difference. So maybe it's just fueled by superstition,
Yeah,
and false beliefs. That and they suffocate them, which we know about fish, right? Fish is suffocated to death. That's how we kill them. But apparently, the same happens with shrimps. And there's a new, I say new, it's not really new. It's not even funny. Electrocution. Electrocution is the new chosen method of death for 440 billion shrimps a year, except it's not happening everywhere. So a bunch of them are still suffocating after they've had their eye stalks crushed in order to make them spit out more eggs.
and they just
Beautiful.
lob a
Stick that in your
hairdryer
prawn
into the pool
sandwich.
or something. Yeah,
Stick that in your prawn sandwich and eat it.
yeah, it's a good point. Just stick with the mayo, I'd say. Leave the prawn bit out. Um,
All
Jim
right, let's
Ratcliffe,
move.
then.
Yes.
Jim, for those who don't know, is the co-owner of Man United. Very rich man, billionaire status, right up there in that respect. But the Daily Telegraph is back, Dale, because this is the story of you and him.
Yeah, check it out. And it's a funny old story because I put something up on social media at the weekend about this bloke, Ratcliffe, um, just really just pointing out, what he's doing a lot of harm at Manchester United. He's going to sack another 200 people. A few months ago, he took away the packed lunch of staff there in a bid to save money. I think today we learned that some guy he brought in that only stayed a few weeks. It cost him 4 million quid to sack him. Forget his name. Might have been Dave Beresford. I'm not really sure. But whichever way you look at it, there are some what appear to be kind of spiteful cuts on the one hand, and then some huge wastes of money on the other, and a continual decline in terms of football. But the point I made was anyway that football's about community, it's about being part of something, and this bloke Ratcliffe doesn't understand that because I don't think there's such a thing as a tax exile community. That would be an oxymoron because they're all just in it for themselves, right? He's a tax exile. He's reckoned to save £4 billion by living in Monaco, and fuck, what's he doing over here? I just wish he'd stay in Monaco and just
Yeah, but they're
keep.
doing so well, aren't they, Man United?
Well, it turns out Ineos are doing rather badly as well at the same time. He seems to be caught in a perfect storm. There's a
Yeah,
downward spiral of chemical prices and values across the world that's been hitting them. Massive losses across all the different group companies at the
yeah.
same time as Man United is struggling on and off the pitch. His car company is eating cash as well. And I think he does Barber jackets as well. You know, it's kind of like an empire of vanity projects all fueled
Barber
by
jackets, eh?
chemicals. Yeah, but anyway, I had a pop. But the story here was that the Telegraph are following me on social media. Bless the Telegraph, and they picked it up and turned it into a newsprint story. And we had a little bet last week. How many times are they going to be in the Telegraph? You bet
Yeah,
three, I
yeah.
bet two, and somebody done the numbers. And in the last 2 weeks, it's been one, only one. I'm very surprised by
Wow.
that,
I
but it was
reckon they were
this
listening
one.
to this and thought we're going to that pair up, having a bit of fun on our behalf.
Yeah.
We'll make, we'll make it a number that neither of them selected.
But the really surprising thing was simply that they're following me on social media. I say something on socials, they turn it into a newspaper headline. I'm like,
Yeah,
wow, wow, is
yeah.
this where we are?
That's the kind of way it seems to work now.
Yeah,
Extraordinary. Here's a question from Alan who says, "Dear Dale, that's very nice and kind of
that's sweet. That's
slightly
sweet.
old-fashioned, but bring it back, dear Dale. I've always thought that the high cost of nuclear electricity was
Mm.
because it was really for producing plutonium for bombs. Since there are now enough bombs to blow the whole world to bits, it does seem odd that they keep producing it. I suppose some military advisors just can't get enough and convince politicians of any hue that we need more. The whole misuse of taxpayer money in this respect deserves an official public inquiry." I know you're quite strong on
Mm.
nuclear energy, maybe for different reasons, but he's introduced a not an unreasonable component to the debate, Dale.
Yeah, plutonium, not an unreasonable component at all. But actually, he's talking about the same thing. He's talking about economics. He's saying, why is nuclear so expensive? I thought we had all the bomb material
Yeah,
we
yeah.
already needed. And the fact is, it's not about bomb material. I know it's the kind of thing that we used to say to ourselves decades ago. Oh, they only want nuclear power so they can make bombs. And there is some truth in that, absolutely. But the economics of nuclear power being really quite crazy, that's inherent in nuclear fission. The idea that you can control a nuclear explosion in a containment vessel for anything like an economic sum of money and make electricity from the resulting heat.
Sure.
And we've asked the Office for Value for Fair Money, this new thing that Labour came up with, to look at Sizewell C and carbon capture and storage as two wonderful examples of not value for public money.
Yeah. Here's an interesting story. Identical twin study reveals
Mm.
whether vegan or meat-based diets are healthier. What's all this about, Dale?
I love this one. So they took 22 pairs of identical twins, so 44 subjects, and I'm guessing they weren't children anymore.
Yeah.
When you hear identical twins, you think that, or I did. But anyway, they 22 of them had a vegan diet, and the other 22 of them, they're all opposing pairs, of course, had an omnivorous diet, and they basically proved that vegan diets are good for your cardiovascular health. It was only an 8 week period, and in 8 weeks, the health of these people changed significantly enough for them to see the difference in identical twins, which ruled out, of course, any kind of genetic interference in the results.
What about that?
Brilliant.
Shall we move to X-rated corner, Dale? I know
I
this
think
is
we
your.
should do. We should lean into this identical twin test, and maybe we should like do some psychological testing. Left versus right. Test some net zero theories and stuff like that, and
That's
just
very
see. Do you know what I
that.
mean?
Well, we might have a few here.
Maybe we keep feeding them the vegan diet on one side and just see how they react to the idea
See you, yeah. And
of a
over
war on
time,
net zero.
we'll get less X-rated corner communications
And we,
because
yeah,
everybody will be happier, and they'll go, "Hey, yeah, it's like I had the stuff that Dale told me, and I'm not a miserable old bastard."
what
So
I'm wondering if whether a diet like that would make you more predisposed to like, the nice things in the world, like, planting trees and hugging trees and believing in net zero and the climate crisis and a meat-based diet makes you more predisposed to the other way, nuclear power, fracking and a
yeah,
war on net zero. Do you know what I mean? Just a theory. Anybody listening to this wants to go and test it on 44 people that are identical twins, I say have at it.
yeah, just find 44 identical twins. There's
Well, we know where they are.
probably a whole
They
bunch living near you. So uh, here we go then, Dale. 2WB10 says Starmer is slowly morphing into Dale Vince. You watch, she'll be trotting out a gold jacket in the next 12 months.
I heard that, and do you know what? I thought, oh, I know the coat they mean because I've got this shiny
I've
gold
seen it.
jacket.
Did you wear it to something we did? I can't remember.
Maybe, and it's got a pink furry collar, which I really love. It cost me
That's
about a tenner. It's quite cheap and tacky, but I really love it.
yeah.
But I haven't seen Keir Starmer wearing anything remotely similar.
No, but I would quite like to
Yeah, that would be fun. Do you know what? I'll dig it out and I'll send it across
send
to
it to
number
Keir.
10.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
say,
what you
hey,
need to
forget
do.
those
Or
spectacles that Lord Ali gave you.
next time you're on a sleepover at number 10, Dale, you can just leave it on the banister.
I thought I'd send it with a message. Forget the spectacles and the suits that Lord Ali gave you. You know, here's a
Yeah,
golden coat with a pink fur collar. Come on.
absolutely. Yeah, Joseph's got nothing on this coat. Here's one from Sean who says, Dale the grifter Vince is so worried about the Reform Party because if they get into power, his gravy train is over. There you go. You've
My,
been told, Dale. Do
my
you want to resign now?
gravy train. It's my vegan gravy train. I
Vegan
just want to
gravy
say
train.
that. Come
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
I mean, just
Not
like,
beefy gravy.
come on. Yeah, I mean, hell. We should all be worried if Reform got into power because, blimey, the wheels would come off, wouldn't they?
Well, I tell you what, this podcast would suddenly become about a week long.
It would be endless, right? We'd just finish an
We'd
episode
just
and it'd
be
be
on air
time to
all the
start the
time in
next
this
one.
kind of strange world because you would be discombobulating by the day.
Yes, we would. I can
And
imagine it now.
finally, Tommy the
Ready?
main man says the UK's biggest tax dodger, Dale Vince, the LIBOR donor, recipient of billions in green subsidies to this company, Ecotricity, has never paid 1p in income tax for his salary as CEO and uses tax evasion schemes through shell companies in the Caymans. I tell you what, I don't. Often we read a sentence out that's got a bit of old shit in there. You've got about half a dozen. Do you want to challenge them individually or just?
It's impossible. I mean, that is just a pile of nonsense. It's got everything in it and everything that's not true. I mean, this guy obviously has missed the headline, and I think it was in the Telegraph. Thank you, Telegraph, that showed that I'm one of the top taxpayers in Britain. I think I ranked at number 81, top taxpayer. Just repeat that.
Yeah,
Forget the idea that I've never paid a penny in tax or I'm based in the Cayman Islands. I've got nothing outside of Britain.
yeah,
Top taxpayer in Britain. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
absolutely. And I can
Actually,
say,
go on.
go on, Dale.
I was just going to say, actually, I think he might be. No, I don't want to go there. Drug
All right.
reference, forget it.
Well, I was
Go
going
on.
to say, having had a pint with you every now and again, Dale, I think that if you were in a pub quiz with me and it came up, where is the Cayman Islands? You're not the person I would ask. So investing there, no.
I thought it was in Rishi Sunak's pocket.
That's very true. Yeah, that's where it is.
So I've got the Cayman Islands here somewhere. I know I left some money there. On that note, I mean, just going back to Reform, I don't know if you saw it, the craziest little video online. There's some Reform people sat around a table with somebody that might have been a little bit more sensible. And this Reform guy says, Rishi Sunak, how can he be English? He's brown and he's a Hindu. And he was deadly serious and he repeated himself. I mean, this is Reform. You can't be English unless you're white and presumably Christian.
Bizarre. Yeah, who was that guy that said that? It was Fraser Nelson, the journalist, was the person who was defending Rishi and saying, oh, mate, come on, is this where you're at? And again, it was that curious. There was a bit of a backlash to that because I think most people thought it was what an odd thing to say.
Yeah, I'm really rather wrong. Anyway, I interrupted your ending piece.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing BAFTA award-winning about it at all, Dale. I was just going to say, let's speak in a week. I hope the ankle. You got crutches, by the way.
Let me have a look. See if I show. I got that lovely boot.
Oh man, you got one of those proper old boot things.
Yeah.
What's the healing time? Are we talking weeks or months?
Yeah, I think it's a few weeks before. Well, it might be a couple of months before I can play football again. That's the real test. So it's all good. It's all good. So let's have another bet. How many times will I be in the Telegraph before my foot heals? I think that's going to be quite a few.
Yeah. Can you let me ponder on that?
Yeah.
I'll come back with a very accurate answer next week, though. Speaking of week, Dale.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Don't forget to follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/DaleVince, facebook.com/DaleVince, and if you didn't know, on TikTok too.